Good afternoon or good evening, depending on what time you're watching this. Thanks for clicking on to the Thursday, the 3rd of July edition of Vogan's European Outlook. In today's video, I want to continue to build this case, the concerns of drought growing as we head into the heart of summer, with a little in the way of forcing to really change this overall pattern. It is a repeating pattern. It is a pattern that so far this summer has been a repeat of ongoing heat waves, starting off in the southern half of Europe, and that ridge has been flexing its muscles back and forward, competing with an area of low pressure up towards Iceland. But yes, we do have a deficit of rainfall across the continent, especially central and western areas of the continent itself. This is a graphic that I was delighted to come across only recently. This is the 60-day precipitation anomaly for the continent of Europe here, and you can see over the last 60 days a real significant deficit of rainfall here over the majority of France. Now, keeping in mind the temperatures that we've seen, Iberia, but particularly up into France, Low Countries, and periodically into the southeast of the UK. Now, the overall summer idea, remember, is lower pressure, cooler weather across the northwest, drier, warmer across more southern areas of the UK, and then extending into the continent itself. So in terms of rainfall and anomalies, we've obviously seen quite a deficit. We've actually got wetter than average across the northwest of England, into southern Scotland, much of central and northern portions of the island of Ireland, including Northern Ireland, is wetter than average as well. But up across central and northern Scotland and the bulk of England, even wetter across England, Wales, if you notice, which is interesting. But across the bulk of England, towards the near continent and then into the near continent, we've got this significant deficit of precipitation. And I've looked at multiple model runs here, multiple models, should I say, not runs, but looking at the rainfall over the next 30 days, and this is really somewhat concerning, and I'm always trying to keep this fair, balanced approach without hyping things up, but there is kind of some form of concern of a 2022 setup here going on, with the last time that we've seen a proper drought summer in the UK was 2022. This was the year, obviously, that we did achieve 40 Celsius. But if you look at the GFS extended here for the next 30-day rainfall anomaly, so this is obviously anomaly, this isn't rainfall, we are going to see rain. But generally speaking, you look at particularly England, Wales, and into the heart of Europe here, between now and the 1st of August, there is a significant rainfall deficit on top of what we have already seen, of course. So this is obviously the last 60 days. This is the upcoming 30 days of the GFS extended. This is off the ECM extended. And the only area of the UK that's wetter than average is across the north of the UK. England, Ireland, Wales, France, Low Countries, into the central areas of Europe here, firmly drier than average. Let's move on then to another model here to get the cross-model agreement. CANCEP's model. We've got a wetter Western Ireland, northern portions of the UK, drier towards the southeast and into the near continent as well. Now, another aspect to consider is the Mandulan Oscillation. This is the weeklies of the CFSV2 model. And you can see here, week 1 shows upward motion over the Pacific, and into week 2, again, large-scale subsidence, which can kind of reinforce this pattern that we've had up until now. Look at week 2. So this is the period now between, I don't know why that's cut off. That's annoying. That this is week 2, same idea. Week 3, same idea again. Now, if we don't get an uptick, a significant uptick in tropical activity, I can't really see anything to break this pattern. Remember what we've got in terms of the dryness across Europe. So this is obviously the second. So this is the midpoint of June in terms of a drought monitor for Europe here. Look at the UK, Ireland, into the near continent. Now, Iberia is doing well because obviously we had a very wet spring down here, very dry across the UK and Ireland. And to be honest with you, with sea surface temperature anomalies, if I can find it, looking like this, with a very warm water surrounding the UK and Ireland, very warm across the Mediterranean. That's where the ridge, I think, wants to go as we head towards the middle portions of the summer. And if you look at the opportunities for region building, once again, that is looking increasingly likely. Let's have a look then at the CFSV2 weeklies in terms of Europe. Now, I built a case yesterday about this potential uptick in West Pacific typhoon activity, that then changing the shape of the upper level pattern across the Pacific, North America, Atlantic, and eventually into Europe. With this dry soil, warmer than average Mediterranean and surrounding waters around the UK and Ireland, I think the ridge is wanting to focus over this region as we head through the month of July. This is the upcoming 7-day period. We've got a strong ridge at the core, centred to the southwest of Ireland here, another ridge core over eastern areas of Europe here. Moving into week 2, you can see here that the ridge then regroups, moves back into that very dry territory across northern France, Low Countries, southern portions of the UK and Ireland here. Always having a jet stream not that far to the northwest. So unfortunately for folks here in Scotland, including myself, we're going to have to remain patient. This is one of those kind of classic summers where you get a hot, dry England, you've got a cooler, wetter Scotland. We've seen it time and time again, and this looks to be similar. This is the period now, the 17th through the 24th of July. Look at how the ridge has then lifted northwards, possibly in response to, 10 to 14 days previous to that. The wheels set in motion with regards to the uptick in cyclogenesis, tropical typhoon activity over between north of Philippines and south of Japan. If we see systems moving northeastwards into the North Pacific, that strengthens the jet, then creates a trough around the Aleutians, a ridge over the northwest portion of North America. That then creates a downstream trough into the eastern half of the United States, and then lifts the pressure over Europe once again as a consequence of that ripple effect. So if we skip back, looking at the CFSV2, this kind of reinforces the overall thinking in terms of precipitation. A lack of precipitation increases the potential heat as we see the pattern returning. So we're going to see a trough. We're going to see cooler conditions, more unsettled conditions across the UK and Ireland. But with this lack of rainfall, once that ridge eventually comes back into play once again, it's very likely that we see the temperatures shoot back through the roof again. So repeating pattern, repeating heat wave potential as we head into the heart of summer. So week 1 off the CFSV2, Scotland is wetter than average, but into week 2 it starts to go drier than average. Look at the lack of rainfall in terms of anomaly anyway across Europe. Into week 3, same story. Into week 4, same story still as well. Looking at temperatures, then anomalies anyway, and you can see here cool upcoming 7 days. That will be a relief, especially the folks in the south. Yes, we're seeing temperatures back into the upper 20s once again with an area of low pressure moving in from the west. We're pulling our air in from the south. But then we're going to see a downward trend again. Lower pressure, cooler conditions, windier, wetter, more unsettled. Look at how it's warm across the Mediterranean basin in southern and central Europe here. Into week 2, the ridge then builds back north. Week 3, you see the temperatures on the increase. So that is rather interesting for sure. This is the past 30-day temperature anomalies across the continent. Cool east, warm west. And we obviously know how warm the month of June has just been. This is going to be very interesting in terms of the temperature anomalies. So let's have a quick look then at the temperature anomaly over the next 30 days according to the GFS ensemble. So it's actually interesting now. It's showing a cooler north, warmer south of the UK. Looking at the ECMWF extended for temperature. And this is how it's looking. So it's showing again a slightly cool north, warmer south of the UK. So that is the ECM and the GFS ensemble. What's it looking like in terms of the CANSIPS model here for the same period? So this is the month of July overall, and it's indicating warmer than average. So the ridge is always wanting to kind of return to the west of Europe here. Looking at, let's have a look at total precipitation over the next, couple of weeks here. This is taking us out to Friday the 18th of July. And one standout is we do have a wetter Alps and into eastern areas of Europe here, where you've got more of a trough that is wanting to always kind of build into the eastern side of Europe here in response to that ridge trying to lift up into the west of the continent. So not a great deal of difference between June and the month of July here, and without any real significant increase in tropical activity over the Atlantic to start to kind of shake things up, give the atmosphere that kick that it needs. And with a large-scale rise in motion over the Pacific, subsidence over the Atlantic, and that has been the case during the month of June. Don't really see a great deal of change really overall. So you can see here, wetter in the east, wetter, drier in the west, but you do have a wet west-facing UK and Ireland here, especially over the next week or so here. We've got areas of low pressure that move in. Always dry across eastern Scotland and also across the south of England and Wales here. So that's off the GFS model here. This is off the ECMWF. Same story, wet across the far east of Europe here. Western Ukraine going to get quite a lot of rain over the next couple of weeks here. It's over the Alpine region as well. We do have some wet weather moving into parts of the Low Countries, into Germany as well. The further southwest you go into France and into Iberia, the lack of precipitation you see. And that precipitation over northern Iberia is largely in the form of thunderstorm activity. Possible cut-off lows as well also, by the way. But Western Ireland, Western UK, and especially the northwest of Scotland, looks as if that is going to be the wettest region. In terms of 850 temperature profile then, we are going to have some mobility within our pattern areas of low pressure to the north, higher pressure to the south. The warmer air is always kind of focused to the south. We are getting a break in terms of the heat. We've had two during the month of June. We are going to get a break through the first half of July. You can see here fresher air associated with these areas of low pressure moving in off the Atlantic. But as we progress towards the middle portions of the month, that's when things start to get interesting here. Keeping in mind what I mentioned about the what's going on within the West Pacific, then that ripple effect across the Pacific, in North America and the Atlantic. We're then going to start to see the jet getting lifted a little bit further north. And you can see here as we move towards Friday the 11th of July, how we are going to start. So this is the middle to second half of next week. My thinking is we're going to start to see that high and warmer air, as well as the jet, lift further north over the west of Europe here. And then as you can see here towards the middle portions of this month, yes, we have another feature running in across the UK, but we're starting to build the heat over the European continent again. Look at also what's going on over eastern Canada. Look at how far north that warmth is beginning to spread. What does that tell me? It tells me that the pattern is becoming more amplified. So the ridges and troughs are becoming much more wavy. Jet getting lifted north, getting forced southwards downstream. And if you can continue with that ripple effect, you then open the opportunity to see heat coming back into play once again. And by the time we reach Saturday the 19th of July, there is another surge of significant heat lifting up into the British Isles again, according to this GFS operational run. Let's have a quick look at the ensemble to see if it's seeing similar to that here. Play through the loop here and see if the ensemble is indicating. Certainly flirting with it, if you notice here. The 15 Celsius isotherm reaching the north of France. Still got a relative flatness with a trough over Greenland and over the North Atlantic here. So that is something that we need to keep an eye on here. And you can see as we move right towards the end of the period, the southeast of the UK is never far away from real heat. That it has to be said. Looking at the ECMWF model then, and see what the 850s are showing. And you can see here, by the time we reach the end of the run, let's go back to the here and now. A little bit of back and forths, a little bit of fresher northerly flow. Then again, we're continuing with this kind of north-south split in conditions. This is a very classic summer pattern, by the way. The only uncharacteristic part about it is when it gets hot, it gets really hot. And the reasons for that is the warmer SSTs around the UK and Ireland, the Mediterranean, and the storage of unusual warmth and the availability is never far away. And you get that type of upper pattern, it then doesn't take an awful lot to lift that heat, that excessive heat, up through France and into the southern UK, given how dry the soils are across the near continent and across particularly the southern half of the British Isles here. So this pattern is going to continue to repeat itself, and we are going to see more in the way of heat this July. You can see that here of the ECMWF model here towards the end of next week here. Again, same thing, that 15 Celsius isotherm at 850 reaching the southern UK, and we will get spells of heat getting all the way up into Northern Ireland and Scotland as well, by the way. It's not always going to have that door shut, so to speak, but it's just much more easily tapped into the further south you go over the UK, as well as parts of Ireland, I suppose, as well. Looking at the tropics then, we do have an increased chance of development here off the southeast coast of the United States. 60% chance of a system developing, according to NHC here. And we also had a major hurricane Flossie that is now back to tropical storm strength, increased shear, increased in cooler waters, has now pushed that system to a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm after being a major hurricane. But we've got another system that's likely to develop, an 80% chance of development well off the southwest of Mexico here, well to the south of Flossie. That would be the 7th named system, I'm sure that is, if that and likely will develop here. But back to that system in the off the east coast of Florida here. If this develops, it would be the 3rd named system of the Atlantic hurricane season. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward here. Obviously, a full weekend of content as always coming up here on the channel. We will look at the tropics in more detail on Saturday, and then obviously the live stream will be back as usual this upcoming Sunday. It'll be a slightly different one, slightly different setting, it has to be said, this Sunday, all being well. So more will be revealed on that in the next wee while. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time with more. Bye for now.